Hello, everyone. Welcome to the Orchestra Teacher Podcast. This is Dr. Charles Laux, and we have a special episode this week, something just a little bit different. Back in February, I had a wonderful guest, Harrison Cook, who is the orchestra director at Kennesaw Mountain High School, on the show. And when he was scheduled to come and record the podcast, he said, hey, can we, talk about some violin pedagogy? I have some questions. And I said, sure, as long as we could talk about some cello pedagogy, because I have some questions. And so we recorded a few minutes of cello pedagogy and then some time on violin as well. So I'm going to share that footage with you today. I think it's absolute gold. I hope you guys are all enjoying your summer break and will enjoy something a little different from our podcast. Again, Harrison Cook with some cello things for you.
The Orchestra Teacher Podcast is sponsored by Kaleidoscope Adventures.
Recruiting and retaining talented musicians is essential for new orchestra directors building a program. And one of my favorite tips for generating interest is to plan a trip. There are so many options. You can participate in a festival at an amusement park, take the stage at Carnegie Hall in New York City, or travel abroad and perform in Vienna, the legendary city of music. Wherever you end up, not only will your current students look forward to the trip, but younger students will count the days until it's their turn to go. If you have no idea where to start, connect with Kaleidoscope Adventures by visiting the link in the show notes. They've been planning exceptional performance travel since 1993 and will make you look like a seasoned professional.
So what's nice about cello, which drives me nuts on violins, is there's one pattern that gets you through all of them, basically. Past your open string
So
scales.
we're talking about scales.
Scales, scale patterns.
3-octave scales? Or
It works for all of them.
All of them. Okay.
Yeah. So the first two octaves have their own pattern, and then the third octave is always exactly the same, with varying exceptions.
Okay.
So for like C major, there's the standard going up this way. And then once you get to the third octave, it's always two notes, and then 1, 2, 3 at the top.
1, 2, 3. Yep.
And that 1, 2, 3 at the top, I'm always bugging the cellos about this. That is the exact same as violin. And all those times that I've been screaming at them about high 2 versus low 2,
Bigger patterns. Yeah.
it's
They get to use
exactly
them
the
in
same up here.
competition.
And it's the same hand shape. It's actually the same size. Because if you take a violin, that's the length.
Oh,
And that's where
I
the
never
thumb is
thought
right.
about it that
Yeah.
way, but
And once I started playing violin in 6th grade, I was like, oh, this is so much better. And now whenever I'm teaching my private students, I hand them the violin, and we do it here, with a little tiny violin, just to get used to that. And I'm like, this is your 4th finger sitting here.
Nice.
So then your scale, that's your hand shape that you see in violin land all the time. And there's finger, for major scales, it's high 2. For minor scales, it's low 2. And you just get used to holding these hand shapes as you go through. For anything other than, C, G, D, the easy ones, if I'm doing like an E flat major scale, the pattern is extension, extension, no extension, no extension. And for the first and only time, you use a 3. And they memorize the pattern, extension, extension, so X, X, no X, no X, 3.
But it's the shifting part that.
Yeah.
Okay,
And
so you'll go through that.
Yep. So it looks mysterious. You're like, well, how do I know where to move? And there's patterns all over this thing. You'll play every string one time, and one string you'll play twice. And it's whenever you run out of string going backwards. So pick any scale like F. I can't go back anymore. Like nobody, so I shift up. For E, can't shift back anymore, so I shift up. For E flat, can't shift back, so I go up the G string on this one. And as long as I'm following the pattern extension, extension, shifting, no extension, shift, no extension, shift, a 3.
So
just
1,
break it up
2,
in
4,
pairs.
1, 2, 4. Okay, they're both all 1, 2, 4, but you do the
Everything's
extension,
twos.
extension, 1, 2, 4, 1, 2, 4, then 1, 3, 4.
Yep. So X, X, no X, no X, and a 3 out of the red. If they use a 3 before, then they did it wrong. Just like, do it again. And you can practice just playing the first finger notes. A flat, D, G. And what's really nice about the pattern is getting them used to keeping fingers down. So like when you're shifting down, they all do this. which is a massive shift. Right? And it's the same on all strings, but 1 to 4 is huge. 1 to 1 is tiny, right? And you get them thinking about how big is the shift themselves, and we will always stop. Shift up a whole step on the old string, go across. Shift up. And it's not always a whole step. There's different patterns, but as long as they know
they have to know what the bass finger is. And I tell that my violin and viola students, like, you got to know where the bass finger is, especially if you're going from a 2 to a 4 on a crazy shift. Like, where's your first finger? What position are you in? And they're like, I don't know. They're just going for that note, and that's the wrong. That's the wrong.
I play for them fairly often in school, and I'm always like, watch my first finger. What's it doing? It's just gliding around up here. Every now and then it'll slide over, but I never pick it up, unless you absolutely have to. Once you vibrate, you let go, but then you shift, 1's in charge again, and then you go, right? So that's the first 2 octaves for any scale. Doesn't matter. Once you get to like A flat, shift. Now I gotta travel up the edge, right? This, I call it the block of your instrument, the most annoying part of your instrument. So make sure they get their elbows up and over, right? And have them do this first, right? And figure out, when does my elbow actually rise whenever I'm doing that? It's always around 4th position, right? So everything's swinging up. And then when they shift, prep that first. What position do I want to go to? And then I go. Right?
Okay.
And then for the 3rd octave, it's always 1, 2.
When are you having them come around? Like, what position?
4th, it should already be high. Otherwise, you get that, especially if they have buttons. So just make sure that's high enough. And whenever there's big shifts, I was trying to think. It's at the barber adagio. We're doing that where they have to get pretty high. If I'm shifting up to a B flat, for instance, like way up here, work backwards. Figure out, this is where my elbow wants to be. This is where I am in first position. So you raise to that position first, and then your hand just falls into position. Right? And just let gravity do its thing. And one thing that's super important.
That's very similar for, leading with the elbow on the violin.
Exactly. One of my first things I always talk to with new groups is I have them all play an E. Like, how did you find that note? And there's a script you can follow. Like, how did you find it? Muscle memory. And I say, what muscle? And there's always one kid that says, my brain. I'm like, okay, what? always. Right. And then you have them start breaking it down. And usually they say their finger. And I'm like, okay, so my finger travels up until I find that. No, that didn't work. Right. So then I'd have them close their eyes and get up there and start thinking about it. It's the distance from your bicep to your forearm, and the height of your elbow. That's the only 2 things. Right. So when you see like Yo-Yo Ma and those guys like flying around up here, we're latched onto harmonics, because harmonics are your friends. Right? There's only 3. You got to know where those 3 are, and you can find anything else in those positions. And it's all, how wide was this? So whenever I have these if I have a big, giant shift up this way, I'm leading with the elbow first, and then my hand just falls down. And as long as my elbow's going to this height, and I open to the right level, it's going to be in 2, right? So kids freak out because like, oh my God, it's really high. And I'm like, is it really?
Yeah, and then you get the kids that'll just reach for it and their thumb's left behind. Correct. So, and always making sure that thumb is a whole step behind.
The thumb is so hard in a classroom setting to teach there. The 3rd octave addresses some of that. And what I always teach is have a plan for when the thumb's going to go up. So like sticking to the E flat major scale. If I slowed that down, as I shift, my thumb comes up, and it's always a whole step behind 1. And you could stick your first finger in between that almost anywhere on the cello, and it needs to be following along with you. And the point of the thumb is to bring down the string, because they'll often just, it's up here, it's back here.
Right.
Have the thumb down, and then think violin. It's very, very small as they get higher. And then the pattern is just 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 3. And if the pattern is always the same where the first step is a half step higher than 2, and I'll have them tap right there, and then replace. Whole step higher. Half step. Whole step. And just fling them into high octave scales. Just make them do it just to get used to it, because they can understand conceptually, but they have to have the repetition.
And then when they descend, is there any?
Same thing. So keep your first finger down. Let it come down. 2, 1. Shift. Thumb comes back. And break it up and make them think, okay, now I'm going to bring back my thumb. Now I'm going to bring it up. This is where I'm going to place it across the thumb, etc. there's the only painful thing in cello ever is learning thumb position.
Because you're building that callus. Yeah.
And we call it grinding. Mine instantly pops to life whenever I play it, but it's invisible, but you can feel it.
Okay.
You know? But the second I start playing, you see grooves. You can't see it, but there's grooves that form.
Yeah.
Right there. There's two dots, and it's the cello badge. You just like, here we go. These are my thumb grooves. It's cool. And your pinky also gets a little ridge on the outside because they need to be leaning in. But I teach the thumbnail. Halfway across the thumbnail is going to be your D string, and wherever your A string lines up, because everybody's hands are differently built. And
so halfway across the thumbnail is the D string. And so for those that don't do a lot of thumb position work, you're always making sure you put your thumb on 2 strings for balance.
Yep.
Yeah.
With varying exception. Like it's one of those always for now.
Right.
It's always across the strings and for now.
Okay.
And then.
Well, in the level of cello that I play and when I teach.
Always. Yeah.
It's always.
Always. Yeah. The other, once they get that, the other issue they're going to do is they're pushing down with their thumb, which you don't want to do, right? Because this muscle will inherently get bigger just over time anyways. Like mine, it's basically flat on my right hand, but on my left hand, it's bulge over there.
You're
and that's
pumped
just from
up.
years. Yeah. And I always tell the kids, like, we got these tiny muscles. Football players are building the big ones. You will have the strongest hands compared to football players because they catch it.
Yeah, everybody asks me to open jars and stuff. It's like,
Yeah, and I always tell the kids, like, I could probably rip an apple in half with my left hand, even though I'm right-handed, just because I do so much stuff over here. But even then, it's the weight of your arm. And in cello, it's all about straight lines. In violin, you break here. Never in cello land do you break your wrist forward, right? Unless something really weird is happening. And same thing here. If I'm in thumb position or in first, from my knuckle down to my elbow is always straight, right? So when my thumb comes in line, if I just push with my thumb, everything's going to start breaking on this side. So I want to keep everything up, and I tell them, like, rev like a motorcycle, and you pull it back. It's okay if your thumb nails on the D string.
Yeah.
It might actually help. And then use the weight of your arm to come down. And as a guy with hairy arms, I use that as my gauge for where I'm in these positions, right? So I said there's height and width here, but there's also this contact point.
Space. Well, you can feel the contact point on that.
And I know, like, my A harmonic, I know exactly where my hand's going to hit.
And then I tell the kids this too. That's how we gauge position work on violin and viola. And I tell the students, I said, this is why you need to play the same instrument, because every neck is different width, every neck is different length, and it feels different. And so you need to develop the 3rd position feel, and the 5th position feel, and the 4th position feel on your instrument.
And even if the neck is a centimeter smaller, that's out of tune.
Yeah.
It's going to make a difference.
Millimeters make a difference, especially in the violin.
Fingerprints.
Yeah.
Right? So once you're there,
I like that.
comes down.
Pull back.
Yeah,
I like that
motorcycle.
Okay. Yeah.
And then from there, the fingers, the whole point is to bring the strings down to make it easier for your fingers. So you can have the first day, we call it grinding, and
you do that. Okay.
Just tell them, do it as long as you can without bleeding and without crying. And it's usually 30 seconds, before they're like, oh, I can't. And then just don't make them do it again until the end of class. Say, we're going to do it one more time. Sorry.
Yeah.
But your hands heal so fast. Like,
right.
The next day it kind of feels like a bruise. And by Wednesday, try to get them to do it for 30 seconds and then 40 seconds. And then by then it's totally fine. And I could do this for an hour and not feel it.
Yeah.
But once they got that and they can push down comfortably without having too much pressure here, then you have them just hopping up and down here. Just writing 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3.
I just remember the D major scale was my thing.
Yeah. And that's where we start, D major scale. Because once you get here, on any scale, it's the same pattern. 1, 2, 3 up at the very top, and very gentle light fingers up here, because then you have to vibrate. Right?
Okay.
And that causes all sorts of issues with the thumb too. If they're pushing down here, you can't vibrate, because it's all pinch and squeeze. So it's got to be round, right? So it's there, but how much pressure do you really need? And that's what I'm always reminding them. Like, it's not that
much.
Right.
As long as your bridge is the right height.
I was going to say, like, even my school cellos, there's some that are just like super high, and I'll tell students, go grab a different cello. Like, it's not worth the pain.
No,
of
right.
And having nicer instruments, like, I wish we lived in band world where we could have like the nicest instruments and all this stuff, but that alone is worth the expense. Just give it to your company, whoever you work for, and say, I really want this to be well set up.
I have a few, because it's winter now, that my strings are too low on some cellos, and I'm like, okay, we need a winter bridge on this one. But
Hey, we just got a brand new one, and it wasn't the bridge, it was the neck swung so far up because it moves over the seasons.
Sure.
And you couldn't even play the A string without it buzzing. So we had to get that back or go get it repaired. But that's the main thing. So thumb, make sure they're always in the same thumb grooves. That's their mark, right? Make them proud of those, right? And then motorcycle back just a little bit and then push down. And you do want your arm almost resting on the cello, but not here, because then... they get that They're just always straight.
Okay.
Tools, you can strap a ruler to their arm at any time for a cello.
That's
always straight.
You have always that straight wrist.
Yeah. There are things where you have to do these weird extensions, but that's really advanced.
Okay.
We're not gonna get there.
Yeah.
Yep.
Very cool.
Okay.
That's great explanation of those scales and then some, all the thumb position.
Yep.
Thanks so much for sharing that with us.
Sure.
Now we're going to talk a little bit about extensions, and Harrison's going to explain, how he goes about teaching extensions and some of them, I guess, misconceptions and all things extensions right now.
I think this is probably maybe the most poorly taught thing in the string world, is extensions, and it causes pain, and people just dislike extensions because they seem really scary and hard. And every time I go to a conference and present on this, I'm like, hold your hand up like you think an extension should look.
And they're all like,
it's there, and it's wrong. Like, there's so much happening inside of your hand that there's just no way. And I always point, that's an extension, which looks weird, right? Because we're so used to, it's got to be really wide. But this space, that's the extension that we're looking for. And the elbow is the most important part of your body on a cello, right? It's such a big instrument, you got to get around it. And when we first learn extensions, I always say, pretend your little annoying brother's right behind you, he's bugging you. The first thing you're going to do is say, get out of here, right?
Oh, okay. The preparation.
Yeah, the prep. And then you point your second finger in this motion, and that easily gets you to E, and then you come up and over your fourth finger to get there. And making sure, I'm going to swing.
A lot of kids will,
they'll just
get a little closer.
They do this massive reach this way. And it's painful to look at, or they're here.
Yeah, they're trying to do it like at one thing.
Yeah, and there's two types of extensions. You got forward and backwards extensions, but they're driven by the elbow. And I'm looking for the straight line from here up, or from here down to 2. Right?
Okay, down to 2 on the forward extensions, down to 2, backward extension down to 1.
Yeah, and backward extensions, you really don't use them a lot. When you get to where you have to like hold a G and a B flat, that would be one of the few cases we have those sorts of things. You see those in Vivaldi and some of those concerto grossi. But that is just drop the elbow towards the cello and point your first finger back. And the first thing I do whenever I'm teaching those is say, okay, drop your elbow, point your first finger, and try to get it all the way back to the nut. It's easy.
Yeah,
even with fairly small.
Yeah, they can reach it.
Yeah, and then extensions feel really small once you actually get your elbow involved. But getting them used to that, and middle school teachers, if you're able to encourage this from the beginning, it makes high school so much easier for them. And then couple that with the fact that your hand has this big old arc in it, and your second finger is really long. So if you're here and then you try to put down 4, you're going to be flat every time. But you come up and over that, and make sure that your thumb is tracking along with your second finger, because that's probably the other thing that happens that kids do on their own is they'll get that and then they leave their thumb behind.
Right.
And everything collapses.
The thumb needs to stay under 2.
That was another thing I should have brought up in the other one, but I use marshmallows in class.
You use marshmallows?
Yeah, to prevent squeezing.
We're reverting back to the scales real fast.
Yeah. For simple scales, we do this like CG, anything you don't have to shift, do it with violin, do it with everything. And to prevent squeezing on the back or squeezing on the side of a violin, you take miniature marshmallows and you try to play a scale without smushing the marshmallow.
Wow,
and I give them a handful of them, and I say, if you smush it, drop it. And our floor is just littered by the end, and we sweep it all up and go. But use the weight of your arm to bring everything down, not squeezing everything up, right? Yeah. So in extension land, the premise applies. You can't do the marshmallows with extension, but the premise applies. Like, my thumb's not doing anything, but it just needs to catch up with my hand. Okay. Just don't leave it.
You got to bring it out behind.
Yep. So practicing, bring the elbow back, and then it just comes back to your neutral hand position, right? Yep. And then coming back the other way, and it's just unwinding. So in this case, I'm curling one and bringing my thumb back with me. My elbow comes, right, and just drill that without your bow over and over and over again. You don't see these backward extensions until probably 8th grade, maybe 9th grade, if you're doing anything with B flats. Okay. Yeah. And even then, normally you're going to shift and then keep going. Almost everything's going to be a forward extension for now. And that's all elbow back. And if they don't use the elbow, get mad at them. Just
Okay.
do it again.
Yeah.
Just move your elbow and get it forward.
Elbow's key.
Yeah, and extensions should be really comfortable, and they're so helpful. Like, you can just live in third. Like, everything's in that position. But if you ever watch Yo-Yo Ma, watch any player, and watch their elbow, once you're aware of it, it's swinging all the time. Because it just helps you reach your positions way easier. And then you can vibrate. Good luck vibrating that.
Right.
That you can't, right? So you release, and then you're ready to go again. Yeah.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, thank you. That's
You're welcome.
very helpful.
Sure.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
Thank you for tuning in. For resources and more information, visit orchestrateacher.net.